Suki Panasaranwan Balvandersopal has a lot on her plate in EastEnders next week, and Vinny Panasar Shiv Jalota isn't set to make things any easier. Viewers will know that Suki and wife Eve Panasaranwan Heatherpeace have been looking to expand their family, and they're preparing to take a step closer to their goal as they go in front of the adoption panel. Before that though, they are roped into helping Vinny move. It seems that tensions are set to rise, as by the end of the day, Suki finds herself on the receiving end of a dressing down from drunk Vinny and the Vic. The pair launch into an argument, with Vinny accusing Suki of not caring about the anniversary of Jags Panasar's death. Viewers will recall that Jags was killed in prison in 2021. When he got on the wrong side of a gang behind bars, Ben Mitchell agreed to organize protection for him. However, Ben later called off the protection in a fit of rage after falling out with the Panasars. As a result, Jags was killed during an attack in his cell. Having had time to reflect, the next day sees Suki and Vinny share a heart-to-heart about Jags. But when she returns home, Eve can sense she's upset. To make matters worse, Suki later has a run-in with Nicola Mitchell, Laura Doddington, at the Minute Mart. On the day of the adoption panel, which also happens to be the anniversary of Jags' death, tense Suki is worried that things won't go to plan. At the adoption panel, after yet another run-in with Nicola, Suki struggles when they question her about her other children. Overwhelmed and emotional, Suki flees the hearing, leaving their hopes of becoming parents hanging in the balance. At home, Vinny tries to encourage Suki that all is not lost, and as if on cue, Suki gets a call from the adoption officer. Will things go in their favor? Or are Suki and Eve's dreams of expanding their family set to be crushed? Walford was left reeling after a devastating tragedy shook the Panasar family to its core. The loss came suddenly, leaving heartbreak, unanswered questions, and a trail of blame that threatened to tear the family apart forever. At the center of the storm was Vinny Panasar. The young businessman had always been fiercely loyal to his family, especially his mother, Suki. Despite their many clashes over the years, he had stood by her side through countless battles. But this time was different. This time, grief turned into anger, and anger became something far more dangerous. The day of the funeral arrived under dark gray skies. Residents of Albert Square gathered to pay their respects, whispering quietly as the Panasars struggled to hold themselves together. Suki appeared composed on the surface, dressed in black and trying to maintain control. Yet behind her calm exterior she was barely coping. Vinny, however, looked broken. His eyes were red from sleepless nights, and his face carried the weight of unbearable pain. Throughout the service he barely spoke. He simply stared ahead, refusing to meet anyone's gaze. But the silence didn't last. Later that evening, family and friends gathered at number 41 for a wake. The atmosphere was tense. Every conversation felt forced, every smile hollow. When Suki stood to make a speech honoring their loved one, Vinny suddenly slammed his glass onto the table. The room fell silent. "Don't," he snapped. Everyone froze. Suki looked stunned. "Vinny." "No," he shouted. "You don't get to stand there pretending you're the grieving hero." Gasps echoed around the room. Nish watched with interest from across the room, while Eve immediately sensed disaster unfolding. Suki struggled to keep her composure. "I know you're hurting. You know nothing." Vinny fired back. The pain in his voice cut through the room. For years, Vinny had buried his frustrations. He had accepted Suki's controlling nature, her manipulations, and her constant need to manage every aspect of the family's lives. But grief had destroyed the wall holding those emotions back. "If you'd listened," he said through tears, "none of this would have hit Suki like a punch." Eve stepped forward. "Vinny, maybe this isn't the time." "It is exactly the time," he yelled. He pointed directly at Suki. "You always have to be right. You always think you know what's best. And now look where that's got us." Suki's eyes filled with tears. The family death had already left her feeling responsible. Hearing her own son voice the guilt she had been carrying was almost too much to bear. "Please," she whispered. But Vinny wasn't finished. "You never listened to what anyone else wanted. You made decisions for all of us. You pushed and pushed until everything fell apart." The room was silent except for Vinny's heavy breathing. Even those who disagreed with his outburst could see the agony behind it. This wasn't hatred. It was grief. Raw, devastating grief. Suki finally broke. A single tear rolled down her cheek. "You think I don't blame myself?" she asked quietly. Vinny hesitated. "You think I haven't replayed every moment in my head?" she continued. "Every decision? Every conversation?" For a moment her voice cracked. "I would give anything to change what happened." The admission shocked everyone. Suki Panesar rarely showed vulnerability. Yet there she stood, completely exposed. But Vinny was too consumed by loss to soften. "Well, you can't," he replied. The words landed with brutal force. Suki looked devastated. Unable to face any more, she quietly left the room. As the front door slammed shut behind her, the atmosphere became unbearable. Eve turned on Vinny immediately. "What were you thinking?" Vinny looked away. "I meant every word." "Maybe," Eve replied. "But she's hurting too." For the first time, uncertainty flashed across Vinny's face. Deep down he knew Eve was right. Suki was grieving just as much as everyone else. Yet grief rarely follows logic. Later that night, Vinny found himself alone in the square gardens. The streets were quiet, illuminated only by the glow of nearby streetlights. He sat on a bench, staring into the darkness. Moments later Eve appeared. Without saying a word, she sat beside him. For several minutes neither spoke. Eventually Vinny broke the silence. "I just miss them." His voice trembled. Eve nodded. "I know. I keep thinking they'll walk through the door." Tears filled his eyes again. "And then I remember they're gone." The reality felt impossible to accept. Eve gently placed a hand on his shoulder. "You don't have to carry this alone." Vinny looked away. "I hurt Mom." "Yeah," Eve admitted. A long silence followed. But grief makes people say things they don't always mean. Vinny wiped his eyes. For the first time all day, the anger seemed to fade, replaced by sadness. Back at home, Suki sat alone in the kitchen. The house felt emptier than ever. She replayed Vinny's words over and over. Part of her wanted to be angry. Instead, she felt heartbroken. Because beneath his accusations was a son in pain. And beneath her mistakes was a mother who had lost someone she loved. The next morning, neither knew how to face the other. But one thing was certain. The death had changed the Panesar family forever. Whether Vinny and Suki could rebuild their fractured relationship remained to be seen. Yet in true EastEnders fashion, the road ahead promised more tears, more confrontations, and perhaps, eventually, forgiveness. For now, grief ruled Albert Square. And the Panesars were left wondering if their family could ever heal from the tragedy that had shattered their world. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to EastEnders Spoilers Official.